Мы защищаем и тех, кто создает угрозу для Российской Федерации. А это в основе своей, в принципе, одни и те же силы, что в Иране, что в российском случае, там где-то подальше, в тылу, за спиной.
This is my video update on this Saturday, midday, June the 21st. Coming to you from Larnica, Cyprus. Let's talk about some news. And let's start things off with Putin at the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum 2025, where the Russian president gave the keynote speech, as he does every year, and he also took part in a panel discussion, and as always, Putin said some very interesting things. He talked about Project Ukraine, he talked about Iran and Israel, and he talked about the Russian economy, which is in tatters, I tell you. Anyway, let's start off with what he said about Project Ukraine. And the more Putin speaks about Project Ukraine, the harder the line he takes. That is obvious. He is urging the collective West and the Ukraine regime to take Istanbul Plus while it is still on the table. So on Project Ukraine, the key points from what he said on Project Ukraine was that Russia is not looking for Ukraine to surrender. They're not looking for an Zelensky capitulation, but they are looking for Ukraine to accept the realities on the ground. That is what Istanbul Plus is all about, accepting the realities. That includes the 4 oblasts and Crimea. He was asked about what is going on in Sumy, the Sumy region, and Putin said that Russia has not ruled out taking Sumy, the city of Sumy, and eventually the entire region. This has not been ruled out according to the Russian president, but he said at the moment that is not the plan. The plan is at the moment to create a buffer zone, a security zone, as Putin called it. And he revealed that at the moment, the security zone that has been created in Sumy is 10 to 12 kilometers in depth. And he said that this security zone has been created because the Ukraine military was shelling Russian regions. And so Russia had to come in and take 10 to 12 kilometers of Sumy. But he has not ruled out eventually taking the entire region. When he was talking about Sumy, Putin went on to say, and I quote, "You know, we don't have a saying or a parable, but an old rule where the Russian soldier sets foot, the land is ours." Where the Russian soldier sets foot, the land is ours. That is what he said in reference to Sumy. Putin basically telling Ukraine, once again, urging Ukraine to take Istanbul Plus. The further they delay, the more oblasts Ukraine will lose. Putin also went on to say that the crisis in Ukraine was caused by a coup. He said the West tried to act from a position of strength with regards to Ukraine, and that every stage of the Ukraine crisis, Russia offered Kiev to stop fighting and negotiate. That is true. Absolutely true. That at every stage, going back to the coup of 2014, and probably even before the coup of 2014, but at every stage of the Ukraine crisis, Russia has offered Ukraine and the collective West an off-ramp from Minsk 1 to Minsk 2 to 2022 Istanbul Agreement, for which Boris the Clown sabotaged, to Istanbul Plus. Wizz Air. Wizz Air. Russia has offered the collective West and Ukraine an off-ramp, and they have rejected it every single time. He said, Ukraine is a tragedy, and it is all the West's fault. And I quote, "This is the result of the work of those who do not want to put up with the global changes taking place in the world. The former US administration explicitly stated that it had spent billions of dollars on the coup in Ukraine." Bidenopoulos, Blinken, Sullivan, and of course, Cookies Newland, who did give a speech, and she did say that, and this was a speech from way back. I think this speech was around 2014. It was either before the coup or after the coup. It was at some Chevron event, I believe, and Cookies Newland said that the U.S. had spent $5 billion on Project Ukraine. So what else did Putin say? He was asked about what areas in Ukraine he considers to be Russian. And he said, "You spoke about the areas in Ukraine that we consider ours. I have already said many times, Russians and Ukrainians are one people in this sense. The whole of Ukraine is ours, but we have never questioned Ukraine's sovereignty. At the same time, the conditions under which Ukraine became independent were outlined in 1991 Declaration of Independence of Ukraine, where it is clearly written in black and white that Ukraine is a non-aligned, non-nuclear, neutral state. It would be good to return to these fundamental principles." Accept Istanbul Plus before it is too late. So that is what Putin said on Project Ukraine. And he connected Project Ukraine with what is happening between Israel and Iran. He was asked about Russia helping Iran. And Putin said, what more can we do? Do you want Russia to actually go and fight in Iran? That's not going to happen. But he did say that Russia and Iran are fighting the same forces behind both wars. That was an interesting statement from Putin. Russia cannot fight on Iran's behalf, nor has Iran asked Russia to fight on their behalf, to be fair. But he did say that the forces behind all of this, and he was very clear to say all of the forces behind these two conflicts are the forces that both Russia and Iran are fighting against. He did go on to say that Russia is in a unique position to help de-escalate the conflict between Iran and Israel. He said that there are 2 million Russian speakers in Israel, and he said that Russia has a very large Muslim population, and that Russia can speak with with Israel, with the governments of Israel, with the government of Iran. They can speak with the US and Trump. So Russia is in a very unique position to try and de-escalate this conflict. He did say that Russia is not asking to be a mediator. He did mention that. But Russia could definitely help to de-escalate. And he said that at the moment, what the Russian government is doing is they are offering ideas to all sides. And if these ideas are accepted to de-escalate, then he said that Russia would be willing to take things forward. And then he talked about the Russian economy. And Putin admitted that Ursula von der Leyen is correct. This is what he said at the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum. He said, Ursula von der Leyen is correct, and the Russian economy is in tatters. He said, tatters, tatters, Ursula, you win. I surrender to you, Ursula von der Leyen. He said that the Russian economy is the number one economy in Europe in terms of GDP. And I quote, Russia is already ranking fourth in the world in terms of GDP. And in Europe, it is the first economy. It is number one. That is what Putin said with regards to the Russian economy. And he talked a lot about BRICS and BRICS development and AI and technology within BRICS and how the multipolar world cannot be stopped. I believe he said it's like watching the sun rise or the sun set. There's no way you can stop the multipolar world. And that was Putin at the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum. Now let's turn our attention to US President Trump, who spoke with reporters yesterday. And he got a lot of questions on Iran and Israel. And he also got one question on Project Ukraine, on Lindsey Graham and Mike Pompeo. But let's start with what Trump said on Iran and Israel. He insists that Iran will get a nuclear weapon in weeks. He's absolutely sure that Iran will get a nuclear weapon or has the capability to obtain a nuclear weapon within weeks or months. And then he was asked about a reporter, what about Tulsi Gabbard's statement, and the Intel community, as well as the IAEA, Grossi, who is now going on mainstream media saying that Iran is not building a nuclear weapon. So he was asked about this and Tulsi Gabbard's testimony from a couple of months ago, where she said that the Intel community does not see Iran obtaining a nuclear weapon. And Trump's response to the reporter was that Tulsi is wrong and the Intel community is wrong. That is exactly what Trump said, pretty much exactly what Trump said. They are all wrong. All of them. So Trump saying that his DNI, Tulsi, is wrong and the Intel community is wrong, the IAEA is wrong. What does Trump know that we don't know? Where is Trump getting his information on Iran? The New York Times ran an article the other day with the title, U.S. spy agencies assess Iran remains undecided on building a bomb. U.S. intelligence officials said Iran was likely to pivot toward producing a nuclear weapon if the U.S. attacked a main uranium enrichment site or if Israel killed its supreme leader. So the New York Times is saying in this article that Iran is not getting a nuclear weapon, is not going to build a nuclear weapon, but it will build a nuclear weapon if the United States attacks it or assassinates the supreme leader. That's the New York Times. Trump did say that he is giving Iran a maximum of 2 weeks to agree to a deal. That's what he said, 2 weeks maximum. But there's more. Wait, there's more. Trump said a maximum of 2 weeks. That's the deadline ultimatum. But he said that he would support, or he might support, some sort of a de-escalation or ceasefire if negotiations get going between Iran and the United States. And we are getting reports from Reuters that Steve Witkoff is in regular contact with Iranians, with Qatar as intermediator, so that they can find some sort of, so that they can get to some sort of a deal. He was also asked about Israel, telling Israel to back off, to stop its strikes against Iran, because what Iran is saying is that they will not negotiate until Israel stops attacking them. And Trump's answer to that question from the reporter was that he cannot tell Israel to back off because, according to Trump, Israel is winning. He said they are winning, so it's kind of hard for me to tell them to back off. And the Jerusalem Post, they put up an article with the title, Israel sees no instability in Iran's Islamic regime's control despite IDF ops, sources tell Post. So the shock and awe, the lightning strike, shock and awe regime change plan has not worked. And that was the plan, to decapitate much of Iran's leadership and to strike at various facilities in Iran in order to get to some sort of a regime change. That is Ryanair landing in Cyprus. It has failed. The shock and awe decapitation regime change plan, according to the Jerusalem Post, is not creating instability. It is actually creating, from my understanding of things, more support for the Iranian government. And we are getting this from the Israeli media outlet Ynet. Israel is concerned that the situation with Iran could reach a stalemate. Strikes on central Iran are limited and weak, and Iranian air defense systems have reportedly already begun to be restored in some areas. Ynet reports air superiority over those areas is limited. Speaking about central Iran, Israeli jets face long distances requiring aerial refueling, and flying over central or eastern Iran poses heightened risk. This makes launcher hunting far less effective in those zones. Moreover, signs indicate Iran is beginning to recover from the initial waves of attacks. So it looks like, contrary to what Trump posted on Truth Social and the claims from the Israeli military that they do not have air superiority. That's how it looks. They may have some limited air dominance in areas on the border, in outlying areas, but once you're talking about moving into more central Iran, which is a huge country, very, very big country, Israel just can't do that. They do not have air superiority. I think that's a myth that is getting debunked in real time. They are firing attacks from the air, but it looks like these are standoff attacks, and they're very nervous about entering deep into Iranian airspace. That is what Ynet is essentially saying in this reporting. CNN posted an article with the title, Trump's fear of Iran becoming another Libya stalls decision on nuke site strikes for 2 weeks, according to sources. Yeah, Trump is right to worry about a regime change triggering some sort of Libya repeat. Not that a regime change is going to be easy or even possible, with Iran. Very difficult to get a regime change in Iran unless you go into Iran, right? Even taking out Khamenei, a lot of experts now believe that even taking out Khamenei is not enough to trigger a regime change in Iran. So CNN is saying that the fear of triggering Libya chaos is what is leading to the 2-week delay. Within 2 weeks. Yesterday in my video, I said in 2 weeks. Actually, Carolyn Levitt said within 2 weeks. So that could be a U.S. strike, according to the statement from Levitt. That could be a U.S. strike tomorrow or up to 2 weeks. A little word trickery from the statement that Caroline Levitt said yesterday. I wonder if that's why Trump didn't post the statement on Truth Social. Because if you were able to read the statement, as he usually posts it on Truth Social, then the one word within would have really stuck out. And I would have noticed it, and a lot more people would have noticed it. A lot of people in the comments did notice it from Caroline Levitt's statement. But if it was written down on Truth Social, then you really would have noticed the within 2 weeks. And then everyone would have said, okay, it's not at 2 weeks. It's any time from today up to 2 weeks. So I wonder if he didn't post it on Truth Social so as to remain ambiguous, to create that strategic ambiguity, as Macron likes to say. It could happen any time from today to up to 2 weeks. And Trump told reporters a maximum of 2 weeks. I don't think it has to do with the Libya fears. I think it has to do with the fact that the Trump administration is starting to realize that this is hard. This is very, very hard to get regime change. It didn't happen quickly, and as we said on the Duran, the more time that passes, the more the Iranian government survives and becomes stronger. Time is working against the United States and Israel in this instance, at least as far as a regime change goes. And I think Trump is starting to realize that. And there is a lot of talk now. Not a lot. There is some talk. Let's say there's some talk about boots on the ground as being the only way to actually get regime change. Boots on the ground. And Trump is saying no chance for boots on the ground. But, things change. Trump does flip-flop quite a lot. So what else? He was asked about Project Ukraine and Pompeo and Graham being in Kiev and talking escalation. And Trump's response to this question was that these guys should stop running their mouths because it could get them into trouble. That is what he said about Graham showing up in Kiev and Pompeo. Actually, they showed up in Ukraine. Actually, Pompeo was in Odessa. Graham was in Kiev getting a whiff of that Zelensky #5. And they showed up in Ukraine a couple of days before the Operation Spiderweb against the Russian airfields. What do you think was going on there? But Trump told the reporters that these guys need to shut up because they keep on running their mouths and it could cause trouble. So Trump is telling the foreign policy president of the United States, Lindsey Graham, to stop running his mouth. So that's the response to the reporter's question on Project Ukraine. And that brings us to Tulsi Gabbard. Tulsi Gabbard's post, which has a lot of people talking. And I mentioned Tulsi Gabbard's testimony to Congress from a couple of months ago, where she did in fact state that the intelligence community does not see, they don't have evidence at the moment of Iran wanting to build a nuclear weapon, though she did say that Iran has enriched uranium up to 60%, something that we all know. We all know Iran has enriched uranium up to 60%. That is not a secret. They've been very transparent about that. And they've been, I believe they've been transparent about the fact that that the uranium enrichment has continued up to 60% because it is being used as a deterrent and as a way to get the United States to agree to a deal. Whether you believe that's the right approach or the wrong approach, I think it's probably the sending the wrong messages to continue to enrich uranium up to 60%. But that's the decision that Iran has taken. They have said they've taken the decision. They will enrich uranium to 60% to try and put pressure for a deal. But they still have the fatwa from Khamenei, which says that Iran will not build a nuclear weapon. So that's the approach that they've decided to take. But Tulsi Gabbard said in her testimony that the intel community does not see Iran obtaining a nuclear weapon. Well, yesterday, Tulsi Gabbard posted a message saying that she is now siding with the Trump administration on Iran, and she's on board with Trump and Iran. She posted on X, "The dishonest media is intentionally taking my testimony out of context and spreading fake news as a way to manufacture division. America has intelligence that Iran is at the point that it can produce a nuclear weapon within weeks to months. If they decide to finalize the assembly, President Trump has been clear that can't happen, and I agree. My full testimony below." So the full testimony that she posted on this X post, that she published on this X post, is no different than the testimony that you've heard a dozen times, I'm sure, Tulsi Gabbard's testimony to Congress. But she is framing it as if the media is taking her statement out of context. I don't think so. I think she's being very disingenuous here by saying the media is taking it out of context. I don't think anyone is taking it out of context. Tulsi has said they are not looking to build a nuclear weapon, but they are enriching uranium up to 60%. And of course, you could, with further enrichment, you could, if you decided to, build a nuclear weapon. That is an option if you continue to enrich the uranium. But that's obvious to everybody. The point of Tulsi's testimony, the way I heard it and the way I believe most of the world hears it, is that Iran has not taken the decision to build a nuclear weapon. They have decided not to build a nuclear weapon. That was the main point of her testimony. Well, all the rumors and the reports that Tulsi Gabbard is fighting with Trump and that Trump might fire her, or perhaps she resigns, that there's a big row and a rift in the White House, and that Tulsi has been excluded from Trump's inner circle of decision making. Well, it looks like Tulsi Gabbard has decided, you know what? I want to get back in the inner circle, and I'm going to side with Trump on this one. And she's trying to blame it on the media taking her statement out of context. And she's saying they're manipulating her statement and trying to make it as if she does not agree with Trump, when clearly she does not agree with Trump in this statement from 2 months ago. It was a statement from the end of March. But clearly her statement runs counter to what Trump is saying. What Trump is claiming, which is he is claiming that Iran is going to get a nuclear weapon. Iran must not get a nuclear weapon. And Tulsi Gabbard 2 months ago said Iran does not want a nuclear weapon. At the moment, Iran is not looking to build a nuclear weapon, even though it is enriching uranium to 60%. Anyway, that is Tulsi Gabbard. She has decided to align with Trump and the war hawks on Iran. Tulsi Gabbard. Oh boy. Well, probably expected, I guess. It looked like she wasn't going to resign. And if she wasn't going to resign, then she was either going to get fired, or she would have had to align with the Trump administration on this one. Yesterday, I was talking about the NBC report which said that there is a fight between Tulsi and Trump. And Tulsi's staff told NBC that she is not going to resign. She has no interest in resigning from her position. And so if she wasn't going to resign, well, then she's going to align. You're not going to resign, then you're going to have to align with Trump on this one. Otherwise, he fires you. So let's talk about the EU meeting with the Iranian officials in Geneva. I talked about this yesterday. Stunning and brave. Oh, nice water, very warm. Stunning and brave Kaya Kallas, and the very capable and very competent Foreign Minister Extraordinaire, the UK's David Lammy, and then the French Foreign Minister, who no one knows his name and no one really cares who he is, and the new German Foreign Minister, Mr. Wonderful, who is nothing compared to Annalena 360, very boring compared to Annalena 360, the new German foreign minister, though he absolutely hates Russia. Boy, does he hate Russia, the new German foreign minister. Anyway, they met with Iranian officials in Geneva, and they were going to save the world. They were going to get Iran to agree to some sort of a deal, and then we would de-escalate, and they were going to save the planet from a catastrophic, horrible regional war that could turn into a world war. But they failed. They failed. Not even Kallas, Lammy, the French guy, and the new German guy, they could not get a deal done. Actually, that is... I can't tell what airline that is. I can't tell. Anyway, actually, they ended up, these European foreign ministers, basically repeating Trump's terms to Iran, which is zero uranium enrichment. Those are the terms, they said, to Iran, and it's non-negotiable. Zero uranium enrichment, they told Iran, and they said Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon, so they repeated everything that Trump has been saying. The slogan from US President Trump, Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon, zero enrichment, for which Iranian officials said, buzz off. That is what Iran said. Iran refused to accept the demand for zero enrichment of uranium during talks with the EU in Geneva, and said it will not negotiate with the US unless Israel stops the war. I'm going to get to that in a second. Iran will not negotiate with the US unless Israel stops the war. When Trump was asked by a reporter yesterday about the EU's talks with Iran, Trump said Iran doesn't care about the European Union. They don't want to talk with the European Union. They don't care what the European Union has to say. They want to negotiate with us, with the United States. So that's what Trump said when he was asked about these EU talks. So there you have it. The EU is also fully aligned. The EU foreign minister, Kallas, Lammy, and the other two guys, they're fully aligned with the United States and with the Trump administration. And they are telling Iran zero uranium enrichment. That was EU diplomacy in action. That's a vassal. A vassal will do as its master orders it to do, right? That's why the European Union and the UK and Germany and France are vassals of the United States, whether it's Trump or Biden or Bush or Obama. A vassal is a vassal. They will do as the master orders them to do. So CBS News, they put out an article where they say that US and European diplomats are already talking about a post-regime changed Iran. US and European diplomats confirmed that there are confidential conversations about who would lead Iran next, whether the nuclear sites and material can be secured, and the potential environmental and health fallout for regional allies from military strikes on nuclear facilities. It really reminds me of Ukraine, huh? When the Europeans and the US, when Ursula was in DC in October, November of 2021, and she was discussing with Bidenopoulos and Blinkety Blinken and Jake the Snake Sullivan about putting sanctions, 16,000 sanctions on Russia, and the regime change of Putin and a post-Putin Russia. That's what this reminds me of. They're already planning and they're already talking about Iran after the fall of the current government. Don't get ahead of yourselves, European Union and US diplomats, because the Iranian government, it looks like the Iranian government is getting stronger, not weaker. That's how it looks. So Iran is taking the position that if the United States wants to negotiate and get to a deal, then they have to tell Israel to stop the attacks. That is the Iranian position, and the U.S. European position is that they have to agree to the terms. They have to agree to negotiate before the attacks stop. Right? That's what's going on here. Iran is saying, first, attacks need to stop. Then let's negotiate a deal. And there is a deal to be made, a very easy deal to be made, actually. And the European U.S. Position is first agree to a deal, and then the attacks will stop. Then we will tell Israel to stop the attacks. And this is the exact opposite of what the collective West have been telling Russia during the whole 30-day ceasefire thing. Remember that? This is the exact opposite of the position that they took with Russia and the 30-day ceasefire from a couple of weeks ago. And Simplicius, the thinker, he explains this perfectly in a post from Substack. He says, wait a second, wasn't it that in Ukraine, the appropriate sequence of events, according to this rules-based order, I see what he's doing there, not order, odor, is that first hostilities must immediately cease and only then negotiations should begin? And you can see the West twists the chain of logic in whichever way serves its interests at the particular time. In Ukraine's case, Ukraine is badly losing, and so the West seeks to immediately save their ward by sermonizing Russia about how it's only right that hostilities must end first. In Iran's case, it's the opposite. The West is quite keen to allow Israel its illegal and unprovoked campaign of violence against Iran. No consistency, no principles, as always. Interesting policies from the rules-based order. I need to get my hands on the rules-based order handbook. Anyone got it handy? So we can figure out how things work according to the rules-based order, the international rules-based order. Anyway, let's do some other news. How am I doing on time? Yeah, we need to wrap this video up. I will be quick. Some other news. Zelensky is going to be attending the NATO meetings in the Netherlands, I believe on June 24th. The NATO summit kicks off in the Netherlands. And I reported a couple of days ago that Zelensky had been invited to the NATO dinner, but he was not invited to any of the events. And the reason he was not invited to any of the events was because NATO officials and EU officials were afraid that Trump would be annoyed with Zelensky, because Zelensky would be chasing Trump around asking him for money. And they told Zelensky, you're not going to come to the events, but you can come to the dinner. Well, now it looks like the EU and NATO, they have changed their minds. And Rutte and the European Commission and the EU Council, they have now invited Abraham Lincoln #2 to attend the actual events at the NATO summit, as well as going to the NATO dinner. So the United States will be there. Trump will be there. Very windy. And no doubt Zelensky will be chasing after Trump to try and get a meeting and to try and get Trump to agree to more money and more weapons, and that is not going to happen, especially with what is happening in the Middle East with Iran and Israel. Pretty much all of the U.S.'s assets, so much of the U.S.'s military assets have now been moved into the Middle East or are on the way to the Middle East in preparation for a very big strike. That is what is happening in the Middle East, and it's going to take about 2 weeks, I imagine, for everything to get into place before the big strike happens. But NATO changed its mind, and they said, okay, Zelensky, you can come to the Netherlands, attend the events, and who knows, maybe you catch Trump in a good mood or something, and you can convince him to give you some money or some weapons. I wonder how the phone call went down between Zelensky and Rutte so that Zelensky could get the invite to NATO, to the NATO events on June 24th. Mr. Rutte, this is Volodymyr Zelensky, President of Ukraine. Yes, Mr. Zelensky. Good to hear from you, Volodymyr. Mr. Rutte, Mark. I call you Mark, okay? Mark, listen. You say I don't come to events, I only come to dinner. I say you invite me to an event, and I think Mr. Trump, he will talk to me. I think he start to like me, and he give me money. What do you think, Mr. Rutte? Mr. Volodymyr, I don't know. I'm hearing from Ursula, who told Kaya, who then told Sanchez, who then told Tusk that Trump is not liking you. Yes, Mr. Rutte, but I have information that Trump is starting to like me. What you say, Mr. Rutte? You invite me to events, and I sweet talk Mr. Trump to give me more money. Okay, Zelensky. Okay, I'll invite you to the events. Thank you, Mr. Rutte. Let's do a clown world. That was pretty bad. Anyway, I'm making it up on the fly. What can I say? Oh, man. I'm going to get crap in the comments down below. All right, let's do a quick clown world. Let's see. One clown world for today, and that is that Pakistan has nominated Trump for the Nobel Peace Prize for 2026. Official government statement from Pakistan. At first, I thought this was some sort of a joke, a parody account of the Pakistan government. AI, I don't know. At first, I thought, no way. But it is true. I went on to X, and the official government account of Pakistan has indeed nominated Donald J. Trump for the 2026 Nobel Peace Prize. The government of Pakistan has decided to formally recommend President Donald J. Trump for the 2026 Nobel Peace Prize in recognition of his decisive diplomatic intervention and pivotal leadership during the recent India-Pakistan crisis. India insists that Trump did not play the key role in the de-escalation of that crisis. That's what India says, but Pakistan says different. And they have even decided to nominate Trump for the Nobel Peace Prize. That's the video, everybody. theduran.locals.com. We are on Rumble, Odyssey, Picture, Telegram, Rockford Next. Go to the Duran shop, pick up some merch. I will see everyone tomorrow. Take care.